Our colleague across the hall informed us that one of her co-workers' husbands was on that flight that was destined for Los Angeles. And I just fell apart. They had just adopted a little baby boy named Rocky, and now there's a life that I know that has been shattered.
Okay, live in Boston, Robin Hamilton, WBZ4 News. Back to you.
Robin, thank you for those reports. The events this morning unfolded within minutes.
Yes, here's a timeline of exactly what happened. American Airlines Flight 11, en route from Boston to Los Angeles, crashed into the World Trade Center at about 8:45 this morning. Approximately 20 minutes later, at 9:05, another jetliner sliced through the second Twin Tower. Massport officials tell us that was United Airlines Flight 175, also en route from Boston to L.A. At 9:30, attention focused on Washington, D.C., where a third plane, American Flight 77, crashed into the Pentagon. 9:50 a.m. now, a horrifying scene in New York City as the First Trade Center tower collapses from the damage. At 10 a.m. came reports that a fourth plane had crashed, United Flight 93, going down south of Pittsburgh. And at 10:30, the second trade tower succumbed to the damage and crashed to the ground. And, of course, since that time, Jack, we have watched so many of the pictures of the recovery efforts that are taking place and will no doubt take place for days and weeks to come.
It's a national tragedy, and we haven't seen the total depth and scope of what's gone on in New York City, where thousands upon thousands, more than likely, are dead, including a large number of police officers, firefighters who were on the scene when all of that took place and those buildings came down.
As we told you earlier, of course, there was an attack in Washington, D.C. as well on the Pentagon. Our own Ron Sanders joins us now. He has more.
Kim, we're standing just in front of the Capitol, where just a little while ago we saw Marine One and an entourage of helicopters leave the White House, flying across the Washington skyline, where now you can still faintly see some of the smoke that is wafting across the Potomac River from the Pentagon, the symbolic target that was struck by a Boeing 757 today. It continues to smolder. I drove past it just a little while ago, having driven down the East Coast for about 8 hours or so. It's smoldering just as the World Trade Center was smoldering when I passed Manhattan this afternoon. A rare glimpse of one of the darkest moments in this nation's history. Military officials, according to station WTOP in Washington, say that there are about 100 casualties at the Pentagon. The west side of the building was struck by the plane. Secretary Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff occupy offices on the other side of the building. We're told by presidential spokeswoman Karen Hughes that they are all safe. Secretary Rumsfeld held a briefing a short time ago and said when the casualty numbers are final, they will be more than a few. Right now, we're joined live by Andrew Gelfman, who is an editor here at Washington News Network and saw what happened at the Pentagon today. Andrew, can you step in for just a moment and tell us what you saw, what you heard?
Well, Ron, it was just about the most intense thing I've ever experienced. I was on my normal commute to work, about 1.5 miles from the Pentagon, and I just looked up over a low tree line and saw a fireball rising up from where the Pentagon is, and then an enormous pillar of smoke that looked to me like it was a mushroom cloud. I mean, I had a faint flash that I thought it was something worse than it was.
Had you any idea of what it was at the moment?
None at all. None at all. I mean, I was listening on the radio to what was happening in New York. Obviously, I was aware of that, but just an explosion at the Pentagon, and I didn't see the plane come in because it was below the tree line, but I definitely saw the fireball rising up from it.
This is something that we as a nation are experiencing, but you saw it rather than just on television. You saw it while you were on your way to work, your everyday job. And now it becomes something that's not only unforgettable, but unimaginable. I can't imagine thinking about such a thing. What has Washington been like for you today?
Washington, very surreal. Most of my day today has been spent watching the news reports coming in. At the same time, seeing it on television doesn't really hold that same that same emotional impact that it had, actually seeing it, feeling the force of it actually rock my car a little bit. You know, it's engraved in my brain now. I don't think it'll ever not be there.
Many of us enjoy Washington. You work here full-time and no doubt harbor a sense of pride akin to your patriotism. How is that affected by what happened today?
I think it's probably strengthened. I think that this feels to me like a slap in the face that makes us hold our heads a little higher. You know, we can be punched, but we can't be knocked down.
And this is something that you will be thinking about for many years to come.
Without a doubt.
We had a late report. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much. We had a late report from the Associated Press that said the wife of U.S. Solicitor General Theodore Olson was aboard the plane that crashed into the Pentagon and called him as the plane was being hijacked. Barbara Olson, a former congressional investigator and an aide to Senate Minority Whip Don Nichols, left Dulles International Airport aboard Flight 77, American Airlines 77, heading to Los Angeles. She twice called her husband and described some details of the hijacking, including that the hijackers used knife-like instruments. Law enforcement officials told the Associated Press, and they declined to further describe the conversation. But in a brief telephone interview from his home, Theodore Olson said his wife was on the plane and did call him as the hijacking was unfolding. She said she was on the plane that crashed into the Pentagon. That's the story from Washington. Live here, Ron Sanders, WBZ4 News.
All right, Ron, thank you.
Let's take you now to Massport. They're having a news conference to bring us up to date. It's in progress now.
And security of our passengers and Logan Airport's employees. The pain of these families has been foremost in our mind. These incidences today triggered our emergency response plans. Throughout the day, Massport has worked with public safety agencies at the federal, state, and local levels. We have trained extensively for disasters, though certainly today's events are beyond any of our worst imaginings. I also want to thank the Hilton Hotel and the numerous volunteers who have responded to the Family Assistance Center at the Hilton to support those families who came to Logan today in search of information. We appreciate the patience of the press throughout this long day. We've attempted to provide you with whatever information was made available to us. We will continue to do so throughout the hours and the days ahead. This center here at the Hyatt will stay open as long as this crisis continues. Finally, from the onset this morning, we pledged our wholehearted support for ongoing law enforcement efforts and will continue to do so. Nothing is more important to those of us in the aviation industry than finding out how this could have happened. I'd now like to introduce Tom Kinton, the Director of Aviation for Logan Airport. It's Virginia, VIRGINIA, Buckingham, BUCKINGHAM.
Good evening. I just want to go through a number of issues that we're working on with the airlines and other operating entities here at Logan Airport in preparing to reopen when that reopening order comes from Washington, U.S. airports. We do not have a time at this point when U.S. airports will be allowed to reopen. However, we will be going to a briefing following this press briefing with all of the airlines and other operating entities here at Logan Airport to prepare for what we think will be significant changes in the way U.S. airports will be conducting their business going forward. We believe a number of those orders or directives from FAA will entail a lot of the things we experienced during the Gulf War, and perhaps more. We will be looking at things such as reducing access points to the secure side of our airfield. We will be stepping up the random ID checks that go on at U.S. airports routinely. We will be reducing, we believe, restricted areas to operational minimums. We think we're going to be faced with allowing only passengers through our security checkpoints in our terminal buildings. We believe that there will be no longer any curbside check-in of luggage allowed. All of that will have to occur inside at the ticket counters. We will have to step our canine explosive team efforts up for canine searches of aircraft, cargo areas, and catering areas of the airport. None of this is official. However, for planning purposes, those are the kinds of things we are preparing for and will be discussing shortly with the carriers here at Logan. In addition to that, we have, as Jenny mentioned, the Family Assistance Center that has been operational since early this morning. And we have been advised, and we're coordinating with FAA to allow a couple of flights to become airborne to Boston, carrying care team members from the victim airlines involved. United Airlines will have a care team arriving here, as well as American Airlines will have a care team arriving here later this evening. And we'll be prepared to do a transition with those care teams at the Hilton Hotel with the care team that Massport has been running since this morning when we became aware of these events. And finally, I want to add that one could speculate the reason for the tragedies that occurred today involving the eastern seaboard airports, and why we were chosen was because of our proximity to the New York area and the fact that we have wide-body aircraft leaving our airports fully loaded with fuel that participated in this tragic kamikaze-type attack on New York's World Trade Center this morning. Thank you. Tom Kinton, K-I-N-T-O-N, Director of Aviation for Massport. Want to open it up? We'll now take any questions that you might have. We don't know what, if anything, got through any of the three airports involved. That is under investigation. We're working closely with the federal authorities to determine, if we can, where and what efforts were utilized to bring these aircraft down. Again, we don't know. Any of these things that we're hearing are being immediately turned over to the investigators involved, and they are going down every avenue to determine what went wrong at the three airports involved this morning, and what was used, and what kind of weapons, if any, were used to bring these aircraft down. This is an active investigation, and anybody involved is being questioned. It's extensive. It's a massive investigation, and we're cooperating fully with all of the federal authorities to get them access to any personnel that may have been involved or working this morning, whether it be a security checkpoint, catering, airline personnel, and any other myriad of personnel that may have come in contact with the aircraft involved.
Has there been any reports in recent years of a lessening of the standards or a lessening of the guidelines?
We've been listening to Tom Kinton, someone in the hot seat. The terrorists, of course, who came through security at Logan Airport today into two of the jets. Both of those jets hit the towers in New York City. And he's trying to answer some questions, but mainly talking about tightening security in the future.